Hi, I'm Father Joseph Mary, and welcome back to A Simple Word, where we reflect on the gospel for the coming Sunday. David was 2 years old when he was diagnosed with leukemia. After many fruitless months of treatment at a local hospital, David's mother took him to Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston to see the renowned Dr. John Truman. He specialized in treating children with cancer and blood diseases. Dr. Truman's prognosis was devastating. David had a 50-50 chance of living. The countless clinic visits, the blood tests, the intravenous drugs, the fear and the pain, it all seemed in vain. But David, young as he was, never cried during these procedures. His mother assured him again and again that the doctor cared for him and was only hurting him with the needles because he wanted him to get better. When he was a little over 3 years old, David had to have a spinal tap, a horrific procedure at any age. And his mother explained to him that because he was very sick, he would need this painful procedure. And she told David that he needed to have great trust in Dr. Truman. This doctor loves you and will do anything to make you better, no matter how much it hurts. The procedure was awful. It took 3 nurses to hold David still while he sobbed and struggled. And when it was finally over, the little boy, soaked in sweat and tears, looked up at the doctor and said, "Wow, Dr. Truman, you must really love me a lot." In today's gospel, the gospel we're going to hear this Sunday, we hear John's version of what Mark described in last Sunday's gospel, but with greater detail. This gospel reveals to us in striking contrast the response of 2 disciples who are invited to trust. The gospel begins by saying that Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee. From Capernaum by boat to the other side of the Sea of Galilee was a journey of about 4 miles. John writes that a large crowd followed him. What was the reason for these large crowds, for this vast multitude of people? First, John the Baptist had recently been put to death, and his followers were now seeking Jesus. Second, the 12 had been sent out into towns and villages, driving out demons and curing the sick. Rumor of these deeds of power had spread all over the region. And finally, Passover was at hand, and there was a huge number of travelers flocking from northern Palestine to Jerusalem, and rumors were spreading about this would-be Messiah. This massive crowd had seen the direction Jesus and his disciples had taken in the boat, and so they rushed around the top of the lake by land. On the other side of the Sea of Galilee was a small village called Bethsaida Julia. At the foot of a hill there was a large plain with tall grass. Jesus and his disciples were resting on the hill. When lifting his eyes, Jesus saw this massive throng hastening toward him across the plain. They had hurried the 9 miles around the lake just to see him. And as we heard in Mark's gospel last Sunday, his heart was moved with pity for them. So Jesus turns to Philip with a question. Where can we buy enough food for them to eat? But it wasn't really a question that invited an answer. John writes that Jesus knew what he was going to do, but he said this to test Philip. The Greek word here for test is perazon, which doesn't mean so much to seduce or tempt, but to try in order to strengthen. Jesus knew what he was going to do, and he was inviting Philip to trust him. But Philip didn't trust him. Philip was looking at this desperate situation from a merely human point of view, and it seemed utterly impossible. Philip replies, 200 days' wages worth of food wouldn't be enough for each of them to have even a little. The standard day's wage for a working man was a denarius, and according to Philip's calculation, it would take more than 6 months' wages to feed these people. It was an answer full of hopelessness. So Jesus turns to Andrew. And how different is the response? Andrew says there's a boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. The fish would have been pickled fish from Galilee, no larger than sardines, and used as a kind of relish to soften the dry black loaves of barley. What a contrast between the response of Philip and the response of Andrew. In the face of this same hopeless situation, Philip falters because he sees only from a human point of view. But Andrew brings all that he has, all that he can find, meager and desperate as it is, and he entrusts it to Jesus Christ. 2 fish and 5 barley loaves. Andrew's beginning to look upon Jesus with the eyes of faith. And that changes everything. Jesus says, "Have the people recline." Already we see the Eucharistic overtones, right? The foreshadowing of that final Passover on the night before his crucifixion. John writes that the men reclined, about 5,000 in number. The word used here for men is andres, and refers specifically to men in contrast to women. So it's very likely that Jesus was looking out over a sea of men, women, and children whose numbers had swelled to 10,000. Again, from a human point of view, it's an utterly hopeless situation. From the standpoint of mere human reason, it's an absurdity. But there's more than human reason here. Giving thanks to his Father, Jesus himself begins to distribute the loaves and fish. John writes that the people ate to their fill. In Greek, the word is chortezestai, to complete satisfaction. Gathering up the fragments, the disciples packed 12 wicker baskets to overflowing. Today, this gospel is for your life, and it's for my life. Today, this gospel calls to us in our most desperate of situations. The most grievous assault of the enemy is to assure us there's no way out. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no clawing out of this pit. In your suffering, in your grief, in your fear, in your sin, the enemy assures you there's no way out. There's no hope. It's impossible. In Dante's Inferno, the inscription at the gates of hell read, "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here." In carrying our crosses through life, this is his consistent chorus. Give up. There's no hope. Yet in the gospel, we see that even the most desperate and impossible of situations will be overcome if we trust what little we have, all that we can offer, into the hands of Jesus Christ, especially in the Eucharistic sacrifice, of which this miracle was but a foreshadowing. Remember, your trials, they're not meant to destroy you. Just as with Philip and Andrew, they are perazon, struggles sent to strengthen your faith, to raise you to sanctity, like gold tested in fire. So when you're buckling under the weight of your cross, remember, this is how much he loves you. I'll leave you with a prayer from an unknown author that I pray often in moments of darkness. Trust him when dark doubts assail you. Trust him when your strength is small. Trust him when to simply trust him seems the hardest thing of all. Trust him. He is ever faithful. Trust him, for his will is best. Trust him, for the heart of Jesus Christ is the only place of rest. I'm Father Joseph Mary, and thanks for listening to A Simple Word. If you found this reflection helpful, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.